Am I the asshole for refusing to put my sweater back on to cover my scars? Hey Reddit, I need some advice and I'm honestly torn about whether I handled this situation the right way. So here's the deal. A few years ago, I was in a really bad car accident. It was one of those life-changing moments that you never see coming. I was driving home from work one evening when a truck ran a red light and slammed into my car. I don't remember much from the impact, but I do remember waking up in the hospital, hooked up to a bunch of machines, and in more pain than I thought was humanly possible. The accident left me with severe burns on my upper body, including my arms, neck, and parts of my chest. The burns were bad enough that I had to go through multiple surgeries and skin grafts, and I spent months in physical therapy. It was a long, grueling recovery, and even after I healed, I was left with extensive scarring. It took me a while to even be able to look at myself in the mirror, and for a long time, I wore long sleeves and high-neck tops just to avoid seeing the scars. Over time, I've come to accept that this is just how my skin looks now. It wasn't easy, but I've gotten to a point where I can live with it, and I don't feel the need to hide it all the time. That being said, I still usually wear long sleeves when I'm out in public, mostly because I don't want to deal with the stares or questions from strangers. But recently, something happened that made me question if I'm handling things the right way. Last weekend, my parents hosted a family cookout. It was one of those big gatherings with extended family, friends, and neighbors. We live in the South, and it was sweltering hot. One of those sticky, humid days where the air feels heavy, and you sweat just from standing still. I showed up in my usual cardigan, but after a couple of hours, I was practically melting. I was talking to my cousin, wiping sweat from my forehead, and I just thought, screw it. I took off my cardigan and was left in my t-shirt, which had short sleeves that exposed my arms from the mid-upper arm down. I could feel people looking at me. It's not like I'm unaware of how my scars look. They're red and shiny in some places, rough and raised in others, and I know they draw attention. But it was so hot, and for once, I just didn't care. This was my family, my safe space, and I wanted to be comfortable. For the first time in ages, I felt free to just exist without worrying about what anyone thought. Apparently, not everyone was okay with that. About 20 minutes later, my mom pulled me aside. She had this tight, uncomfortable smile on her face, and she said, "Honey, I think you should put your sweater back on. People are staring, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." I knew she meant well, but the way she said it, it just made me feel small, like I was doing something wrong by not covering up. I told her, "I'm not the one who's uncomfortable, Mom. I'm fine. It's hot, and I don't want to wear a sweater." She hesitated for a moment, then leaned in closer and said, "I understand, but it's just a little shocking for some people. I think it would be better if you covered up." That's when I realized she wasn't just concerned about me feeling uncomfortable, she was worried about other people feeling uncomfortable because of how I looked, and that hurt. I've spent so much time coming to terms with my scars, learning to accept my body for what it is now, and it felt like she was telling me I should be ashamed of it. I understand that the scars can be startling, especially if you're not used to seeing them, but this is my skin. It's the only skin I have, and I'm not going to hide it just to make other people more comfortable. So I told her, "No, Mom, I'm not putting my sweater back on. This is how I look, and if people are staring, that's their problem." She didn't say anything for a moment, and I could see her getting frustrated. She said something about how she just wanted me to be considerate of other people's feelings, and I shot back, "What about my feelings? I'm tired of hiding, especially around my own family." After that, things were tense. I could tell she was upset, but I wasn't going to back down. I spent the rest of the day trying to enjoy myself, but I kept catching my mom giving me these worried looks, like she was embarrassed for me. When we were leaving, she barely said goodbye, and I could tell she was still angry. Later that night, she called me and said she was disappointed that I didn't listen to her, and that I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone. She told me that if I just kept the sweater on, none of this would have happened and everyone would have had a good time. That stung. I didn't know what to say, so I just hung up and cried. Now, I'm stuck wondering if I did the right thing. Part of me feels like I should have just put the sweater back on to keep the peace, but another part of me is angry that I even have to consider that. I spent years hiding my body because I was scared of how people would react. Now that I'm finally starting to feel okay with who I am, I don't want to go back to hiding, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to put my sweater back on? Should I have just done it to avoid making people uncomfortable? Or was I right to stand my ground? What do you think? Let me know in the comments.